All right, Studio Steve, welcome back. Second edition, talking NBA playoffs again. How can we not? We're in the midst of it. We're in the conference finals. We got the Heat and the Celtics playing some amazing basketball in the East. We got the Lakers doing what I think everyone expected them to do, led by LeBron and AD, battling against the comeback kids, the cardiac kids so far of the 2020 playoffs, Denver Nuggets, led, of course, by Jokic, leading it from Serbia, and of course, Canada's very own Jamal Murray repping Kitchener, Ontario. Thank you again for tuning in. Episode 2, as I say, Studio Steve. You can see in the background, we got the AD shot over the outstretched hand of Nikola Jokic, who again is like 7 foot. So you got a guy 7-footers going at it from the 3-point line. This is a new NBA, and these guys are coming in and bringing everything they have and just displaying this amazing talent, giving us this amazing basketball to watch. So I'm pumped. I'm thrilled. I know everybody that's a big basketball fan was a little bit questionable about, the NBA coming back, how it was going to work in the bubble with all the social injustice that was going on, whether or not this was going to be a distraction to lead away from that. Of course, the NBA has done an amazing job of curating with the NBA Players Association the social messaging on the jerseys, on the courts. Of course, the Raptors came in with a big bus, Black Lives Matter as well, rolling into Florida 2 weeks early prior to the bubble starting. So the NBA has just done a phenomenal job, I think, of working with the players, working within the organizations and the teams to really spread the message and not let the focus get away from the social injustices and get right back into the sports life and, everyone just loving watching the sports and being distracted. So shout out to the NBA first and foremost for being able to do what they've done and to present the NBA playoffs like everyone has always remembered it: fast, quick, heartbreaking, heart racing, and every other adjective you can think of. This playoffs has had it. I think a large part of that has sort of been the lack of travel. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone has just been contained within the bubble. So there's not a lot of movement. Players can rest, they can recuperate. They don't have to deal with the opposing crowds. They don't have to deal with a new set of rims that they got to get used to, a new arena. So this has been great, and I think that this has allowed players to excel and play at their highest level this entire time. And so I think it's been fantastic, and I'm really really pumped about what's been going on. Of course, I would have loved to have seen the Raptors continue and be in the Eastern Conference Finals right now, playing against the Miami Heat. But like Serge said, you win some, you lose some, right? And Celtics, obviously, not a team to frown upon or look down on. Really well coached with Brad Stevens. They've got some amazing players. You got Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, who almost seem like they're made for these moments. And these are just 22-year-old guys who really got their start when Kyrie Irving was with the Celtics a few years ago and went down with the injury. And then the backup point guard at the time, Terry Rozier, Scary Terry, came in, and with Tatum and Brown really led this resurgence of what Boston was going to become in the future. And now we're starting to see that come to fruition. So if you're a Boston fan, I'm sure you're loving this. And if you're a sports fan and a basketball fan in general, it's really great to see the teams that are representing both conferences in their respective conference finals right now. Like, it's been a while since we've seen the Heat there, since LeBron James days. It's been a while since I don't think Denver in my memory has ever been this far, since I've been watching basketball anyhow. It's been a while since the Lakers have been there. It's been a while since the Celtics have been back. And so this is great, to see these different markets represented, to see these different teams with these amazing young players blossoming and showing the showcase of what the NBA has to offer, not only for this year, but for the years to come. So I want to get right into it here. We're going to talk Eastern Conference first. Let's get into the Heat and Celtics series. Of course, game one, thriller, right? Miami down again. Miami seems to always be down. In fact, they've played from behind 5 different times in double-digit deficits so far in the 2020 playoffs. So it seems like it works in their favor, and it seems like it's worked in Denver's favor as well. But you got to imagine that being down double digits, especially against the teams that they're playing, the caliber of the players they're playing, and especially this deep into the season, it's got to get wearing on you. It's got to take a toll on you. I think I saw that last game in game 3 with Dragic really slowing down. Whether or not that was Marcus Smart's defense against him or not, or some of these games starting to take a toll, I'm not sure. It could be a combination of both, which likely is. But he's generally the engine for that team in terms of speed, right? If you remember Dallas with Steve Nash, Phoenix with Steve Nash, he kept them going. The moment that he sits, everyone slows down just a little bit. And so when Dragic is on the floor, he really controls the tempo and the pace of the game. He's able to turn it up another level on his own. And I think that that feeds off onto the other guys and rubs off to the other guys. And you've sort of seen that happen earlier in the playoffs with Dragic. Will he just take over the game and then the rest of the guys sort of find a spark or life in just watching him do that? Of course, in the fourth quarters, you got Jimmy Butler who will go to the line, as much as anyone else in the league, sometimes 10 times a game to really set the aggressive tone in terms of how they're going to play, the next 24 minutes or the next 12 minutes of the game. So that sort of stuff I've seen, starting to waver a little bit. And I think part of it could be that the Heat are coming back from these double digit deficits, 5 times already in the NBA playoffs, which in those cases they have won those games. But as I say, that's got to take a toll on your body to put the extra onus physicality wise on your body. Again, there's not a lot of travel, but you're playing 35, 40 minutes a game for some of these guys. And it's obviously going to take a toll at some point. And I think that's part of it. On the other side of the ball, you see how the Celtics have maintained the defensive pressure that they applied against Toronto on Miami as well. So Brad Stevens is a great coach. He's got his team prepared every game. Young guys on this team. So you got to remember the age of some of these guys. They're superstars at 22 years old. And you got Jason Tatum playing 40 minutes a game right now. Jaylen Brown playing 39 minutes a game right now. Jason Tatum scoring 25 a game right now, and Jaylen Brown putting up 21 a game right now. So you got these young guys performing at the highest level. And I think maybe, a few years back when they had that introduction into the NBA playoffs, due to injuries, it really gave them the confidence to where they are now. So you look at the other side of the ball and you see that Boston is doing what they should do. Their stars are playing. Their defense is playing great. They're quick. They got mobile guys. They don't necessarily have a center. Like Tice is their center, but he's kind of more like the traditional power forward. He's laterally quick. He can move and guard on the perimeter. And he can also get down on the blocks as well and get some rebounds, get some block shots, and run the floor. So, they're doing everything that is a part of their game plan. An interesting thing that I think Boston is also doing is going to their bench a little deeper. They went probably 7, maybe max 8 deep against Toronto. And you can already see they're going to the 9th and 10th guy in this series. So, starting to play matchups a little bit. Each team is completely different. So what may have worked last series might not work in its entirety in this series. And you got to just balance and kind of work with it as you're going forward. And Brad Stevens, I think, has done a great job of adjusting. Also, you get the huge spark in game 3 from Gordon Hayward being on the floor. Now, there's a lot to be said about stars on a team that come back from injury and how they're going to affect a game. And in a lot of cases, in Gordon Hayward's case anyways, in this last game, you want to, I don't want to say decoy, but he is a decoy to some degree because he hasn't played basketball in this long. So defensively, you want to go at him. Offensively, you're not really going to expect too much from him, but he was facilitating anytime he was on the floor. It's to be mentioned here that Brad Stevens and Gordon Hayward have a long-term history in terms of coaching and player. And Gordon Hayward actually played for Brad Stevens in college. So he understands his scheme of basketball and his style of basketball more than anyone. So when you have a guy like that on the floor, he knows exactly what type of offense coach is trying to set up. He knows all the ins and outs of all their schemes and all their plays. So he can get guys into particular places on the floor, into their sweet spots, and then drop passes, kick the ball out. And he did a good job of that, I think, in game 3, his first game back. And also it just brings that leadership presence, right? Like this is a guy that puts up 17 points a game all season long, gets injured, unfortunately, and then comes back and is automatically a presence again. You got to have him in the back of your mind, regardless of how long hasn't played. He can put up numbers. He can put up buckets. So, him being in game 3, I thought really made an impact in Boston's favor, of course. And they seem to have control of that game straight from the tip. Of course, when you're down 2-0 on the verge of going down 3-0, which no team has ever come back from in a conference final setting, you know your backs are against the wall and you have no other choice but to win that game. And I think Boston came out and were the aggressors, and they certainly showed that they were not going to go to sleep. You know, they might have been down 2-0, but they got here for a reason, and they've been playing this well for the entirety of the season, really, right? And they've had a bit of ups and downs here and there, but they came to show that they're here to stay. And this series has been fantastic, right? We go back to game one, and Jason Tatum going down the lane, cock back, ready to just drop the hammer on the entire Heat organization. And here comes Bam Adebayo out of nowhere with a one-handed block, which he said his two fingers went numb instantly on that block. And, you know, imaginably so because Tatum's coming to rock the rim. But then he gets that block last second, buzzer beater block, basically. And they win that game. Heat rattled back, 37 point third quarter, holding Boston to only 17 in that game in the third quarter, and then just coming through and dominating in the second half of that game. And so then you get the third game and you get Gordon Hayward back. You get some new storylines into the game. You get some new matchup problems into the game, and you get some inspiration back into the Celtics as well. And I think that really showed. And of course, you get the leadership on the floor and in the locker room as well from a guy like Hayward, which could potentially just carry over through the rest of the series. Because as it seems, he was good to go, and I'll likely see him back in game 4 and any game subsequently after that, as long as he stays healthy. And we could talk about Duncan Robinson real quick. I want to switch teams and pop back to Miami real quick. I mentioned Gordon Dragic. Goran Dragic was, as I said previously in these playoffs, kind of their motivator, kind of their engine, their guy that keeps them going. He sets a tempo, he sets a momentum, he gets them going east and west, up and down the floor, and can really get guys involved, get them into their sweet spots, and he can hit buckets, right? And he's proven that his whole career. He's really turned back the clock this year, and I think that a large part of that was Kendrick Nunn, the rookie Kendrick Nunn, playing almost the majority of every game for the Miami Heat, starting almost every single game. I think Goran Dragic only started 4 games throughout the regular season. And then, of course, Kendrick Nunn gets hurt. Dragic has to come back in. Maybe he's healthy and fresh because he's been sitting around all year and, still training and keeping his fitness up. And that's shown because he's still ready to go 90 miles an hour up and down the floor. But you saw him get limited. And I think part of it, as I say, was the double-digit deficits that they've had to come back from. And you can tell there's a little bit of wear and tear there possibly. And then you got a guy like Duncan Robinson as well, who can obviously put up, 3-pointers in his sleep. And he's got one of the quickest releases anyway in the NBA. They clocked him at, I think, 0.5 seconds in game 2. And so, this guy gives you so much offensive production. But I think the Heat have, gone on too long without being able to hide him on the floor defensively. And a team like Boston has sniffed that out and they're exposing him. And so, he's not necessarily effective against Boston in this series so far because they are putting the pressure on him defensively on Duncan Robinson. And like in last game, game 3, getting him into foul trouble early. He sits on the bench. He can't get in the rhythm. He's not really going to get warm. He might hit a couple buckets here and there, but he hasn't necessarily had the effect that he has had on previous teams throughout the playoffs this season. So that'll be interesting to see how Eric Spoelstra makes some adjustments and tries to get Duncan Robinson. Maybe they go into a little more zone. You can really mask some guys and hide some guys defensively in a zone defense because they don't have to do the one-on-one game. They can play an area on the floor rather than a person. And especially when you're playing a team with a guy like Kemba Walker, even Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, guys that could take you off the dribble, with a quick first step, take you to the rack all day. A guy like Duncan Robinson get chewed up real quick. And I think that's starting to be exposed by the Boston Celtics. So we're going to be interesting to see how Spoelstra makes some adjustments. Maybe he goes into his bench a little more the way that Brad Stevens has with the Celtics. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in game 4. I think game 4 traditionally is in basketball really, even in hockey for that matter, but in basketball, game 4 traditionally is always a really big game because it's it's a decisive game in terms of going up 3-1 or tying it up 2-2. And I think if it's Boston, you're going to see them come out with the same energy they came out with last game. They're going to come out firing. They're going to come out with the defensive pressure. They're going to go to the rack. They're going to try to get Miami into foul trouble early. Miami's smart enough to understand that that's going to happen. I think Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the NBA for a handful of years, and he's a defensive-minded coach. So I think that he's going to switch up the schemes a little bit, and we'll see how he adjusts. I would like to see this series go 7. I have no vested interest in either team. I just like watching good basketball, and so far it's been amazing. So we're going to see where this one goes. I think that, Miami, having taken, in my opinion, a bit of a step back last game, is going to come out really aggressive. I look for Jimmy Butler to be a little more aggressive next game. I think in the fourth quarters is sort of his bread and butter, getting to the free throw line and putting the team on his back. But I think we need to see a little bit more Jimmy Butler earlier in the game in the first 3 quarters. The starting and the ending of the game, the first and fourth quarters are always really imperative. So we'll see how he comes out and tries to set the tone, and whether or not they can match Boston's energy, because, Boston's going to come in real heavy next game. We're going to switch it over, go into the Western Conference Finals. Man, that last game, Anthony Davis, right? Like, he's been waiting his whole career to be in this situation, and he's got LeBron James to do it with. So, I mean, he's got the best partner in crime, but this guy is coming in and playing amazing basketball. And it's not anything shy of what we already expect of Anthony Davis. He's been doing this his whole career. He's been under the radar down in New Orleans for his entire career, but everyone knows that follows basketball who this guy is, what he brings to the table offensively, defensively. He's your superstar. He's a cornerstone of your franchise. This is a guy that is going to go down as the top 5 or 10 players in the league every year he plays, because that's just his game. Ever since he came in from Kentucky, a little skinny kid in Kentucky, still rocking the brow. Shout out to the brow. Still rocking the brow, but a little skinny kid from Kentucky came in and has just been dominant ever since, right? And a lot of guys can't really make that adjustment from college to the NBA. They might have been scorers in college and they get to the NBA and it's not necessarily going to translate, but this guy's been able to carry it through. He's obviously dedicated to his craft. He's put in the work. He only gets better. He's never retreated and gone backwards and recessed. His skill continues to develop. He continues to get stronger, continues to become a better shooter. And now he's got a guy like LeBron James in his corner, on his side. And you can see in the post-conference interviews of the games, the press conference interviews, post-game, his demeanor, the way that he answers questions, the energy and the emotion that he carries. And this kind of rubs off onto the whole team. But when you have a guy with the leadership skills like LeBron James, you can see how it impacts not only the flow of the game, but the mentality of the guys on the team, on the bench. He has an ability to keep guys loose. He still dances. He does a little shimmy, does a little thing with J.R. Smith before every game. Still able to do that and still able to go out and win games convincingly. When you go back to AD, the AD's had his 5th 30-point game so far in the playoffs. And they all come at decisive times when he needs to put forward the stamp of approval that don't forget who I am, right? I'm AD. Like I've been top 5 for a handful of years now. And so every time he wants to come out and set the tone, he has, and it's usually resulted in the Lakers winning a game. And then you look at setting the tone, you see what LeBron did last game. He scored the first 12 points for the Lakers consecutive, right? He just came out and was going to set the tone right away. That, we give you guys mad props, Denver, and Denver can't be slept on because they keep coming back from 3-1. So who knows what's going to happen. But Denver obviously gets the respect of the players in the league and the teams in the league right now, because you see what they're doing. You see the cardiac kids. They're coming back from 3-1 deficits in the series, 2 consecutive series in a row. And then their stars are coming to shine. They got all these young guys starting to blossom with Michael Porter Jr., even Jeremy Grant. Like they got some guys that could ball, right? They got some guys that are coming out and playing some serious basketball, and they're getting love and they're getting respect. But you got a guy like LeBron that comes in and says, "Nah, hold on, man. I'm still here." You know what I mean? Like, I'm still LeBron James, still king of the league, still pissed off that he didn't get that MVP, right? And I think that really soured him. And I think when something like that happens, they're similar to when Jordan lost out to the MVP to Karl Malone back in 96. It was a 96, 97 that, this really irks players that are super ultra competitive, that are like the alphas of the league. And LeBron James is definitely that. And so, I think that's kind of been a chip on his shoulder, and he's going to ride that right to the end here. through the playoffs, and he's showing why he's still the best player in the game, um, arguably. But I mean, numbers don't lie. And then you see a couple of the other things that I want to let me touch on the Denver Nuggets before we go back to the Lakers here real quick. I don't want to give too much light to the Lakers right away. Denver Nuggets, of course, they got their two superstars I've already mentioned. And with Jokic and Murray, this is a young core of this team that if they can keep together for the next handful of years, this team's going to translate into a lot more conference finals and a lot more wins and a lot more accolades and a lot more people wanting to go play with these guys, because Jokic is the single-handedly probably the most selfless player in the league. This guy is setting up everyone. And I should note, Nikola Jokic has the most touches of any player in the postseason. He touches the ball more than anyone, and his first action and reaction is to pass the ball and get guys involved. Who doesn't want to play with a guy like that? And he can still put up 30 points a game. He can still put up a triple-double every game if he really wanted to. And in some cases, he does. He put up 11 straight points last game trying to get Denver back into that game. So when he needs to do that, he can do that. But he can facilitate. He's like point guard center. He's like transforming the game before our eyes. And you're starting to see how when I was growing up, basketball was always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of positional. He's a point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. The game's blown up now. Everyone can do everything. And I think it was starting to go that way when you had guys like Dirk Nowitzki, Kevin Garnett, some of these guys that came in that were 7 foot, that were running the floor, that were doing all sorts of crazy things. Even Arvydas Sabonis, the way he would handle the ball and pass the ball, I think outside of Sabonis, Jokic is probably the best passing big man in the history of the game. Um, hold on. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar could pass the ball too, but Jokic is, he's proving his point. He's proving why he's an all-star. He's proving why he's a superstar, why he's a cornerstone franchise player of the league. And these guys are playing fantastic basketball. They're coached extremely well, and they're got so much fight, and they've got nothing to lose. And I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, talking about them against the Clippers in Game 7. They were going up against a team who had everything to lose, and at the same time, they had nothing to lose. And when you play against teams like that, it can be really dangerous because you get guys like Jokic and Murray who are just starting to become themselves and become superstars before our very eyes. And Jokic, a guy who I mentioned, gets the most touches in the NBA, also averages the most touches. He's gone 7 for 8 with 30 seconds or less in fourth quarter in overtime in the NBA playoffs. So this is a guy who gets the ball at the end and he scores the ball, because unlike a lot of centers in the league, he still goes down on the blocks. He still gets down into the paint. He still gets into that 2-foot area. So not only is he touching the ball the most, he's facilitating, but he's still playing like a center, and this guy can do everything. So you got a team like that that's just battling, and it's not necessarily been easy for LA. Denver's still fighting. Denver's still coming back. And like I say, these guys have come back from 3-1 series deficits the last 2 rounds. And so who knows what they have in store? Who knows what's in the bag? Jamal Murray might just blow up for 40 next game. He's done it before. He's had 2 50-point games already against Utah. He had that 40-point Game 7 closeout game against the Clippers. So anything can happen, right? And we're about to see what's going to happen next game. I think my original prediction prior to this series starting was that the Lakers were going to win in 6. I personally picked the Lakers to go to the finals out of the West at the start of the season. Seems like it's going to be that way, but like I said, a lot of basketball to be played. We'll see where things go from there. Now, I do want to go back and talk a little bit about the Lakers overall. There's something amazing happening with the Lakers. And I'm not even necessarily a Lakers fan, but you got to sometimes, from a sports perspective, you got to appreciate what is happening in the moment. Now, of course, the Lakers struck a tragedy this year, as the league was, as the world was, sports world overall, with the loss of Kobe Bryant and that tragic accident, and his daughter as well, and everyone else that was involved in there. And sometimes, as painful as that is, in a sports perspective, it's also a mega motivator. And I think it very well is working out to be that way for the Lakers this season. You saw when Anthony Davis hit that game-winning 3-point shot last game, he turned around, marched to the bench, and said, Kobe, Kobe Bryant, the Mamba mentality is live and in effect in the LA locker room right now. You see after the game, Frank Vogel, the coach of the Lakers, was giving his pep talk to his boys. They won the game. And then on the 1, 2, 3, he said Mamba on three. This Mamba mentality is infected throughout this whole team. You know, LeBron James, obviously really good friends with Kobe Bryant. So the passion, you know, and the heavy heart that he's been playing with ever since this has happened is going to carry right through to the very last game of the season. And sometimes it's like a team of destiny, right? When these things happen, sometimes there's an emotional pull that just gets a team to perform at this obscenely high level every single game because they're so adamant to win the game. They're so focused to win the game. And in this case, to win the championship. If you remember when Ray Lewis announced that he was going to retire from the Baltimore Ravens prior to the NFL playoffs starting, they steamrolled and went to the Super Bowl and won. So sometimes you just need a little bit of nudge. Sometimes you need an emotional lift. And I think that this is going to probably be the emotional lift that the Lakers needed um, to get themselves geared up and focused for an NBA title run. They certainly have the pieces for it. When we talk about depth on the team, I don't necessarily think they have the deepest team in the league. But when you got LeBron James and Anthony Davis playing at the height of their career every game, they're a dangerous team. You don't want to see them. And, you know, I think Denver is starting to see that right now. And it only seems like they're getting better. Like AD's getting better every game. Braun is getting, I mean, Braun's Braun, but he's just doing his thing every game. And it doesn't seem like they're slowing down. So it's kind of scary if you're the Nuggets because these guys could very well, in the scenario of these guys going up 4-0 and sitting around and waiting for whoever is going to come out of that Boston Miami series, which I don't know about you, but I think that's going to go 7 games. Those guys are playing out of their mind on both sides. It's like defensively amazing, offensively great. You know what I'm saying? To watch these guys come back and forth every play. And it's going to be, you know, and I go back to Braun real quick and say like, you know, I think not winning that MVP and losing it out to Giannis really pissed him off. And I think he's out to prove a point. Not only that he's still the best player in the league, 17 years in, I might add, he's still the best player in the league, that he can still get it done. And regardless of MVP or not, he's going to go get that chip. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, when or if and when that happens, commentators are going to ask him about that MVP and whether or not that fueled the fire a little bit. And I think in addition to the loss of Kobe Bryant, the inspiration that he got from that to really turn up and get his team on to the next level and the loss of the MVP, two things that are just going to drive and propel him to win that and then turn around to all the skeptics and all the critics and just kind of smile and be like, but I can still get the chip, but I still got this because I'm still LeBron James. Who knows, right? I mean, sometimes you like to see it as a sports fan. Sometimes you like to see that momentum carry over. And I know the Lakers are a very polarizing team, much like the Yankees, much like the Patriots. Maybe not the Patriots anymore, but you know, teams in sports that kind of are the cornerstone franchises of an entire league that sometimes maybe have too many wins that people don't really like anymore and don't want to cheer for or don't want to root for. Um, but in this case, you know, I think in the West, you know, of course, going from a man Jamal Murray, but you know, it might be nice to see Braun cap this one off, right? And do it for Kobe and do it for the Laker fans and Laker Nation out there. And on that note, I got to get through to my third topic, which is LeBron James. LeBron James. Let me just shout it out. LBJ. Boom, boom, boom. LBJ right up on here. All right, here we go. LeBron James. Credit where credit is due. I had to write this down. This man's got too many accolades, right? LeBron James is proving why he's still the king, why he's still the best basketball player in the NBA today. I ain't going to say all time because anyone that knows me knows that all time, I'm going to say Michael Jordan 10 out of 10 times. And for number 2 behind him, might go that Mamba. LeBron James. Let me just give you a quick little rundown of some of LeBron James' stats. And believe me, this is not all of them. LeBron James, all-time playoff leader in points. Third in the NBA all-time history in points. Career 38 minutes per game, including this year. This man has played 17 seasons, and he's in the playoffs every time. And he's been in the finals 8 consecutive years. And he can still play 38 minutes a game. 38 minutes a game for his career, 27 points per game for his career, 7 assists, 7 rebounds, and 50% from the field. Career stats so far. This dude's still going. 17 years in the league, 4 NBA regular season MVPs, 3 NBA championships, and 3 NBA finals MVPs in each one of those championships. He's the NBA assist leader this year in 2020. He's still distributing. He's still doing everything he is, and he's still distributing, getting everyone involved and making everyone more confident and getting everyone's games up. 8 straight NBA finals. How do you bet against somebody that goes to the finals 8 straight years? I mean, he's doing it again this year, right? And then you look at what he did last game, scoring 12 straight points. It's like he just continues to put the stamp on. And I know there's a lot of comparisons. People love making comparisons. They love making comparisons in hip hop. We love making comparisons in basketball. The biggest comparison, of course, in LeBron James's entire career was the other number 23, the GOAT. All right. Michael Jordan. There is no comparison. And the reason I say there's no comparison is because they're two different players, two different games, two different eras. And also, you just got to appreciate, We'd spend so much time comparing LeBron to this and to that, and he did this and he did that, and he didn't do this and he didn't do that. And we sometimes are missing the point. This guy's great. He's greatness. 17 years in the league. All those accolades I just rattled off, and that ain't even close to everything. Sometimes you just got to appreciate what these people are doing to the game. The Jordans of the league, the Kobe's of the league, the Wilt Chamberlains, the Bill Russells, the LeBron Jameses. What these people, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, like what these people bring to the game, popularize the game, globalize the game, change the game in terms of its speed, in terms of its strategy. Like they had to change the game because of Shaq. They had to change the game because of Jordan, changing the game because of LeBron, like landmarks in the history of and I want to take away GOAT NBA history, of course. Like I say, I can argue this with anyone. Michael Jordan. All right. But LeBron James is mad nice. So recognize game. Game recognize game, right? We're going to leave it at that. We talked NBA playoffs, Western Conference Finals, Eastern Conference Finals. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of amazing matchups. There's a lot of great players coming out. LeBron still doing his thing. AD just been waiting for this moment his whole life, and it's starting to all come together. Really excited to see what's going to happen in this Heat Celtics game. Really want Miami to pull through and get to the finals against LeBron. You know what I'm saying? LeBron plays his former team, one of his former teams, the team that he won 2 titles with back to back. Be really interesting. If Boston makes it back to the finals and they happen to play LA, it'll be the first time that Boston and LA played in the finals since Kobe Bryant was a part of the Lakers. Who knows, right? There's a lot of storylines. There's a lot of great stuff going on. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Thank you very much for joining me on Studio Steve. We're talking NBA playoffs today. We're going to continue talking NBA playoffs Got lots of more content to talk about musically, mental health wise, and anything that you want to talk about that I might have an interest in that I feel like we should share with the world. Give me a shout. Follow me on Instagram. You can see the link below. You can give me a shout out here on YouTube. Peace, love, happiness. Thank you very much. Studio Steve, signing out.